Welcome to the Open Mic Podcast Show with Mike Midgley.
Hey, and welcome to the Open Mic Podcast. On today's episode, I'm excited to be covering the topic of how to design a high-ticket offer, then build the perfect presentation to present and sell it. Today's influencer guest is Steve Werner, the founder of Monetize Your Tribe. And Steve is based in Vail, Colorado. And I understand it snowed last night, Steve, up in Colorado.
It did. So it's normally like this time of year. So I had my air conditioning running like 4 days ago. It was 80, like 75, 80, which is perfect weather here. And then, last night it got down to 2 degrees and we got 6 inches of snow.
Excellent, excellent. Well, welcome to the Open Mic Podcast. It's a subject that's certainly close to my heart, Steve. You know, as a public speaker myself, working with high ticket services, I know when I first started, there were a million considerations, that I'd got to process. Initially, I'll be honest with you, I had imposter syndrome. Back in 2003, when I first went to do my first public speaking gig, is this really me? They've asked me to go and do this, and whoa, and things like that going off. If for you guys out there listening, if you haven't heard of imposter syndrome, well, we can cover a little bit. I'll stick a link to the great little article there to what they used to do in Silicon Valley when they used to sit there in the $1 million houses and $1 million cars, and then they're like 23 years old thinking, is this really me? But yeah, I'll put that article in there to show that anyway. But that was me way back then. And I always was conscious, Steve, that, would anybody trust me? Would anybody buy my product? Would I price myself out of the market? The list was endless of, what was going through my mind and what I had to sort of consider. Should I lower my price? Should I take a step back? Should I discount? Should I do all that type of thing? Well, I'm really pleased that, 15, 16 years later, I sort of stuck to my values. I understood the value of my time and the expertise. And it's not always, the value that you charge in the hourly rate. If you do that, it's also the value that you bring to the hour. And I think that, there's a big lesson to be learned around that. It's obviously linked to the result that you get your clients as well. So, as listeners out there, I know we've had a lot of requests for these type of subjects. How do I sell my price? How do I increase my price? How do I position myself? So, you're going to be in for an absolute treat. Steve's experience is amazing. He's going to cover some amazing strategies for you to help you on your way. So, Steve and I have walked many miles in that shoe, or those shoes. We've made the mistakes, and hopefully we can try and not shortcut it, but just give you that insight that gives you that ability to get started and move forward. So before we get started, make sure you connect with Steve. You can check out him on LinkedIn, and you can check him out on Instagram with the handle Stephen Philip Werner. If you're driving and you don't have time to write that down, or if you watch on the blog, you'll see the links in the app or the show. So we'll put all those in there for you, Steve, as well. Or you can search the hashtags Monetize Your Tribe, live events, small live events, and powerful presentations, and you're going to pick up Steve's content from there. So, Steve, tell us a little bit more about the background. I know taking the leap is one thing. Dealing with the learning experience is another. And when things don't always go as expected, how do you refocus and bounce back from that first event? And tell us a little bit about that first event, because it's not a great result, but we learned from it, and we are where we are today because of it, no doubt. So tell us a little bit more about what it was, how you bounced back, and how you fixed it.
Sure. So first off, thank you so much for having me on, Mike. I'm super excited to be here.
It's a pleasure.
Man, you touched on so many things in your intro that I can comment on, but I'll stick to the question. So everyone gets excited, right? I'm going to take this leap. I'm going to do X, whether that's be a coach, be a consultant, be a public speaker. So mine was events. I came from corporate level events. I used to build and run them. I worked for several major hotel chains, and then Vail, Colorado actually headhunted me, and I came out here to run their C-suite events, so all their corporate level events. I decided to go out on my own because I had that burning desire, right? I'm going to change the world. I really want to do my own thing. And it wouldn't shut up. So I saved up for 3 years. I had a little bit over $25,000 in the bank.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm doing this. And everybody tells you how exciting it is. Well, let me tell you, when you spend $25,000 in about 8 weeks and you get no results, you are not excited anymore. I packed up everything. I left Vail and I moved to Las Vegas because that was the event capital of the world, or so I thought. And I spent all this money on everything because I I thought the marketing was the easy part. I thought running the events was the hard part. Running the events is hard. Don't let anyone tell you that it's easy. It's not just like, oh, people come in the room and we do some presentations, right? They're both challenging. For some reason, I thought the marketing was easy. I thought I'm going to put up this great looking website. People are going to register. I had 18 speakers that were considered really good in the industry.
Yep.
One of the things, if you ever run your own events, we won't go too far down the event thing, but your people coming are not going to promote for you, not the way that you think they are. No. And everyone told me, oh yeah, they'll promote. I had 18 speakers. I thought they were going to help fill it. I was spending money on Facebook ads. I was spending money. I did print, I did radio, I did television. Wow. I did like the whole gamut. I was like, this is going to work. Nope, not at all. I got 2 registrants and I had to cancel the event. I had to go beg them not to charge me the minimums that I had signed on the lines for because I would have been bankrupt. They were gracious. They knew that I had a background in events and I just begged them and they said, you know what, we'll let you go. I actually had to, I was left like scratching my head, right? I had a little bit of money left on a credit card and I was like, well, what do I do? I had about $3,000 in cash and I had a $5,000 credit card. And I was like, what do I do? I had a friend that was a pretty good friend. She owns a business that has nothing to do with this. It's an app. She owns several apps.
Yeah.
And she said, hey, I believe in you. Her and her husband were like, I believe in you. We know that you could do this. They let me move into their utility room, which, I mean, it was like off their laundry room. It was an 8x8 room, no closet, but it was a free place to live. And it was right down the street from the library. So I started immersing myself in marketing, and speaking and all of that stuff. Right. The short story, I had decided to hold another event at a different location that wasn't nearly as expensive. And instead of spending all my money on marketing, I did the marketing myself.
Yep.
I was able to fill that event, 100 people. The first event, I rented space for 1,000. I was like, I'm going to do this. No, completely wrong. So the next event was 100 people. I was able to sell it out through organic marketing that I did all myself. My marketing budget for it was less than $1,000.
Amazing.
Sold it out. Thought that was, I was like, yes, I finally made it. And then I got into speaking because I learned that the way that you really make money from events is speaking and having products. Yep. So that was 5 years ago. I started with several different products, ended up doing a lot of consulting. So my high ticket product that I sell, I have a course now that is on presentations and I have a high ticket course. But at the time, I just sold, hey, this is a VIP day. I fly to your office. I'll spend 2 days with you and your team. It was between $5,000 and $10,000, depending on the office and what the business was.
Yeah.
I'll give you a whole marketing plan, and then to implement that was somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000.
Yeah.
And I sold every event that I did. I made the goal with the event is to break even on the event. Yeah. Everybody I know goes to events and they look around and they're like, oh, there's 50 people here and they paid $1,000 a piece. That's $50,000. No, you got to pay for the event spot. You got to pay food and beverage. You've got to pay for the AV. You got to pay for the video. You got to pay for all of it. The money is made through what you sell. I usually had one other person that sold at the event. I would take 50% of whatever they sold. It was usually a course. And then I would do marketing, sell the VIP day. But that's like the background nutshell. In the last 5.5 years. Oh, go ahead. Just tell
us there, Steve, on, the second time you mentioned there about you did the marketing yourself, you lowered the room size, and that's not defeatist. It's just said being more realistic, risk management. Was there anything else that you did different there that people because I know a lot of people who are hosting events, some real wildly successful people, some people who I still think are super old, hard tactics, which I think certainly here in the UK, it wears a little bit thinner than it would maybe in the States. But yeah, the stand-up sell, and I think that you get that, that's okay. But the point I'm saying is, what else did you do different that second time round. So, you're in somebody's technically laundry offset room, 8x8, no windows or whatever's going off there. You learn the marketing, you're downsizing. Naturally, you couldn't afford to take another wild gamble because it would have cleaned you out. So that's the natural sort of barriers, and that, it's a little bit like a baseball field. It's got a perimeter, has it, or a football field. It's got a perimeter. You're working in sort of smaller circles, but surely that did you good. And maybe if you'd have adopted that the first time, you maybe wouldn't have been as, I'm not using the word foolish, but as ambitious or as crazy, Joe, we're going to do this. So what else did you do different, to learn?
Sure. So I did pretty much everything differently. There's the people that are not going to want to hear this, but the way that they pick up the phone, call people.
Yeah.
So I don't do hard sale tactics. What I did was, the event was for dentists. At the time, it was on Facebook marketing and how to gain a presence online. Ironically, I got most of the people into the room through either phone calls, in-office visits. So I drew a circle 6 hours around Las Vegas. And I looked at the biggest cities that I could drive to. It was Phoenix, LA, San Diego, Las Vegas, Reno. And I went to those cities and I went into offices. It was for dentists. And I talked to office managers and I said, hey, are you trying to get into Facebook ads? Are you needing help with online presence? We're going to go over, this is what we're covering. We're covering what makes a great website. We're covering how to set up a sales funnel online. We're covering how to do Facebook ads. Those were, at the time, this is 5.5 years ago.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You got to date this, as the audience listening, you got to date this.
There weren't any courses out. Nobody was selling any of this stuff. And having somebody walk in, and the other thing that I did is I swiped them right there. So if they said, yeah, we're interested, I said, hey, look, I'm charging $1,000, but if you take action on it right now, I will give you 2 tickets at $500. So you, the office manager, and you, the dentist, can come to the event. And that right there, nobody does that stuff. This is something I see as an error in marketing across the board. People want to throw money at the problem and not actually solve it. I was talking to some guy last week. Same kind of story that I had, right? He's trying to hold an event. He wants to put 300 people in the room. He spent more than $50,000 in ads and he's gotten about 120 registrants. But the thing is, he didn't look at, I went to his webpage. His webpage, well, it looks good, doesn't have an outcome. There's no reason that you would register for the event, right?
What's in it for me type of thing.
Exactly. He's got 22 speakers across 3 days, but the speaker bios are all targeted at the speakers, why they're great, not why somebody would come, right? And I was like, that's your problem. He changed that stuff and just started remarketing to people who had hit the page, and his conversions started going up because now there's something in it for them, right? But he just wanted to throw money at it. So many people just do that. So that was the first thing. The second thing was I made it a lot smaller. Now when I take somebody on as a client and I help them build an event, I just did one this last weekend. The guy is amazingly successful in real estate, has never held an event. He came to me, he said, I want to put 250 people in the room. And we talked, and this was our VIP conversation, right? And I went through everything with him. I said, hey, look, we could probably put 100, 150, but what I would recommend is let's do 30 to 50 people.
Make it more exclusive.
Make it more exclusive, higher ticket price, and you've never spoke on stage. You don't know, let's get you there gradually. And this guy does millions of dollars in real estate. He was hesitant at first because it's an ego thing, right? He was like, no, I really want to go big. And I'm like, you don't understand. You're untested. You don't have, and you're selling a high ticket coaching program. If you suddenly put 50 people in a high ticket coaching program and you haven't done it, you're going to crash and burn. And I showed him people in the market who had done it. And he was like, you're right. So we're at the event. We ended up selling 42 seats to the event. We capped it at 40. We sold 42. 3 people didn't show up, 39 people in the room. He did over $100,000 in sales.
Amazing. Which
was a good number. It was 8 people in a coaching program. Wow. He closed 20% of the room, 20% of the buying units, which is a great closing rate. And he thanked me so much at the end of it. He was like, thank you for not letting me do a bigger event. Because this is the other thing. You think you can handle stress. When you are holding an event, especially your first event, like you have a million things going on in your brain. You're not going to sleep. He's like, I would have never been able to do this successfully if the room was bigger.
Yeah.
And he was like, so we're planning his next event now. And he was like, I don't want to do a big crazy event. Let's shoot for 75, 80. And I was like, exactly. Like scale it.
Working up there, absolutely. So yeah, and it's about being realistic to your market, Steve, isn't it? And we all want to go to the moon, but when you look at the space program back in the late 50s, early 60s, what did they do? They put it into lower orbit, then they orbited the Earth, then they eventually went to the moon and round and came back, didn't they? And then obviously went from there. So it is stage by stage, and if you are going to crash and burn, you might as well crash and burn at a smaller event than like you say, carry all the incumbent costs that I know you managed to sort of negotiate to get out of some of those in on your first one, but it's better to do that than sink, and then because it knocks your confidence as well, doesn't it? And you start to believe in things like that, which is great. Yeah. But you touched on marketing and online marketing earlier, and you've got some great mentors on your list that I know you put down. People like Russell Brunson, Dan Kennedy, big favorite of mine. Dan, learned from Dan in the late 90s and all the way up, and sort of sad what's happened with Dan recently, and Frank Erm, Ryan Dice, a digital marketer. Just tell us a little bit more about that. And what would you say was the most valuable lesson you got out of all those mentors?
Oh my goodness.
I put you on the spot there. I appreciate it, but I just because there's some awesome names on there, some fan favorites of my own. If been a bit starstruck out there as well. What do you think the biggest lesson is out there of that?
So going back to that first event, when I moved into my friend's utility room, I went to the library.
Yep.
And somehow there was a course from Dan Kennedy called Butts in Seats. Now it sells for, I think it's $1,000 on his website. Yeah. I don't know how it was at the library. Somebody must have donated it, but that course is what got me to fill that second event. Amazing. So what happened then, once I had some money, I cleared just under $10,000 on that first event that was successful, right? And I was like, woo, I made it. This is awesome. So I go to a Dan Kennedy event because I'm like, I got to meet this guy. Like I bought some of his stuff at this point. I go to the Dan Kennedy event and he's doing a roundtable where he's like troubleshooting people, and like I tell my story and I think I'm big and bad, and he just looks at me and he's shaking his head. He's like, you are an idiot. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you have to sell something. Why didn't you sell them anything? And I was like, well, I don't have anything to sell them. And he's like, I have a whole table of stuff right over there. You sell any of it, you get 50%. And so the next event that I held, that's what I did. Yep. But I also I got in Dan's coaching program.
Yes.
And from that, I learned public speaking. I've always been a speaker. I've always been good at speaking. I did a lot in high school, but not like what we would consider speaking, right? It's a different game. I've always been comfortable in front of people. I was a maitre d' for a long time, like doing all that stuff. So Dan joining that program got my eyes open to, one, I needed to speak, and two, so my big hang up, and I think you touched on imposter syndrome. Yeah. My big hang up at the time was, these are dentists with multi-million-dollar practices. Why in the world would they pay me? And the answer is, I knew something that they didn't. And it's not, the biggest mindset shift that you have to make is, our dollar cost is not what we think it is. It is what is valuable to that client. So
yes, absolutely.
If you take $1 million client and your advice is going to raise their income by 5%, which is very right. If you're doing something worthwhile, it should raise their income by 5%.
Easy.
Right? So what is that? That's $50,000. Well, okay, so if I'm charging $25,000, that doubles their investment. That's an awesome ROI. That's 100% ROI. That's what you need to get your pricing on. Now, imposter syndrome, everybody has imposter syndrome, right? There was a really good quote I heard last week from Alex Sharfin. I think it might have been 2 weeks ago, but it's the only people who don't have imposter syndrome are imposters because they're lying to themselves. We all, what we do innately and what we do well, we take for granted, right? The people out there that are looking at you, especially if you are on stage, whether it's your event or somebody else's event, if you're on stage, you are an authority.
Yep.
And they will buy from you. So there's a responsibility that comes with that, because you can stand up on stage, you can go watch a presentation by somebody else and completely BS the presentation, and people are going to buy from you. And then you're going to be stuck having to deliver something you don't want to deliver. So whatever you're delivering, just make sure that it's something that you can do.
You can do. You're an authority of it. You've got experience. And there's also that doing the right thing, Steve, isn't there? Which is, not just taking money off people for the sake of taking money off them. And one of the things it's got to be result focused. Now there's lots of arguments here, and if you've got a query or a question on that, shoot us a message. Use the hashtag #TheOpenMic. We'll get those answered for you. But there is a situation where you see it where, we've got my son leads a HubSpot agency at the other side on that sort of stuff. And, we get a lot of people saying, hey, this, coming to us, oh, this company charges this and they got us no result and this. And you talk to them and you think, well, is it the agency that did a bad job, or did the customer just what we call anchor and be awkward and difficult, not provide their half of the bargain? And one of the things that we started to introduce just on that subject is a code of conduct. And when we take a client part of the onboarding, even in the sales process, but on the onboarding, we remind them of that code of conduct. This is your responsibility. This is like a marriage, partnership, man, wife, man, wife, whatever. It's a joint obligation, and this is what we expect of you. And to allow our teams to do what they can do. So sometimes it is the client who is the problem, but like you say, if you're taking money for things that you can't deliver, then you're going to get a bad reputation pretty quickly anyway. So just make sure that's right. But that's absolutely cool, and I get it. And it's interesting with Dan Kennedy. I got a full shelf of his stuff here, and I actually bought Magnetic Marketing. I think it was 1999. And that's when you got to date the internet here, Steve. People listening to this in 2019. I think this is going to go out late 2019. They're thinking like, internet. Well, really, the internet wasn't really fully formed then. It was there, but it wasn't mainstream. And this is when we're in the UK. We'd get a direct mail piece, or we'd pick up a direct email, and I would write a check. Yes, those things still do exist. But I'd write a check and I'd mail it to the States, or I'd fax my form into which was GKIC at the time, Glazer Kennedy, things like that, with my credit card number, totally unsecure, through the airways, hoping that I was going to get a box back from the States in a few weeks' time. And it was like crazy times. Now, obviously, there's membership sites, you can instant download apps, things like that. But at the time, that's how it worked. And I always remember the biggest takeaway I had out of Magnetic Marketing, Steve, was when Dan Kennedy said this to me in the Magnetic Marketing course, it all fell together. It was the catalyst to bring things together and start me on the journey. And that was, why should I, your prospective customer, choose to do business with you over every and any other available option to me? And I just remember I can recite it to the word, to the grammar, to the full stop. And I'm thinking, well, why should they deal with me? I've got absolutely no idea. Oh, I better work on that. And then it starts to create the message, the value proposition. And then, like you say, you formulate the products out of that to solve people's problems. And, that's how I got started with it way back then. That's over 20 years, well, just about 20 years ago. So crazy days. But an amazing mentor. And, it's ironic how you come across these pieces of luck. Like you say, you just happen to see butts on seats in a library, and then it's just that little bit that got you going.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone listening to this, like everybody that is anyone in the digital marketing space came from Dan Kennedy. Yeah. Like I actually went back, like all the people that were on that list came from Dan Kennedy's inner circle. Yeah. And I would like, yes, there are new ways of doing things, but the core piece is all the same. And instead, like, you can go back and you can get Dan Kennedy stuff. You can find it on YouTube for free. Like, go listen to him, because that is like the core building block that can get your mind spinning. Yeah, like Frank Kern is great. I love Frank. Russell, I mean, so last year, Russell put out a call for speakers, and I beat out over 2,500 people to be a speaker for ClickFunnels.
Brilliant.
And I got one-on-one training from Russell. Russell is super well-respected. He's an awesome guy, and he's brilliant. I mean, he's spent his 10,000 hours learning marketing and learning how to speak from stage. And he's a brilliant, brilliant guy. Like, all of those guys are amazing. And I'm a student of history, and I love to learn. So I've gone through all of that stuff. And what happens is, when you start going through all that stuff, like, you get your own version of it.
You interpret it, don't you?
Yeah. And you get like new content that goes around it, but it's still those core principles, always the core principles.
Yeah, it's amazing. So tell us, Steve, when we talk about on your bio, you've got a strong mission to sort of, focus on 3 core areas. Tell us a little bit more about these and how you want to help these sort of 100 or so entrepreneurs.
Sure. So the first one is creating your high ticket product that speaks to your market specifically. I just talked to somebody, I think 2 days ago, and you see this a lot. Their mission statement was, I want to help people up-level their life. Yeah. Well, I'm like, what does that mean? Yeah. That doesn't mean anything. And people is so ambiguous. There's 9 billion people almost on the world in the world.
Who are you helping? Yeah.
Yeah. So like, focusing, this is the very first part, it's as entry level as I get, but it's even people who say, I want to help entrepreneurs. Who are the entrepreneurs that you want to help? Who are the businesses that you want to help? Like, we're going to get your avatar, and then we're going to create the high ticket offer.
Yeah.
The middle part then is creating the presentation. So many people create the presentation based on themselves, right? This is the guy that I talked to 2 weeks ago that had the event that wasn't selling. It's because the event was based on himself and the benefits that he had, not the outcomes that his customer would get. It goes back to
get by investing in the program or whatever. Yeah.
Right. It's always about your customer. So there's a way to put together a presentation that reaches people. You guys have all been, I'm sure you can think of an event that you've gone to that was horrible, where the speakers were dry, you were falling asleep, the PowerPoint slides had 8 zillion words on them, you couldn't pay attention, and you thought you were like, man, I really want to learn something about this, but I just can't do it, right? That's a horrible presentation. But so many people do that because in their mind, they think, well, giving a presentation is not that hard. I'm just going to give everything I've got. That is not how you do a presentation. No. It will lead to failure. So we work on the presentation. Every one of my clients that I work with, we build out the presentation. They give it to me via video recording where I can pause it, give them feedback, and we go through that 8, 9, 10 times until it's perfect. So that's the presentation piece, and that can work at your own event or it can work on somebody else's stages.
Yep.
Then the third piece is I help you get on stages. And I help build people's events. So we usually start with a 20 to 30 person, 40 person event, depending on how well known you are and what you have going on already.
Yep.
And then we scale that up, and we work on getting you on other people's stages so that you can get your word out there, because I'm all about quality over quantity and high touch.
Every time.
You can throw a ton of crap out on the internet, but it's just throwing money at ads, trying to break through noise. If you want high ticket clients, the best way to sell a high ticket client is to get in front of them.
Yeah.
If you look at a normal sales funnel at the top level, right, you've got a free lead magnet. You get them on your list, you get them to know you. Maybe that's an email list, maybe that's a retargeting list for Facebook. Yep. Then your next 2 to 3 levels of your funnel are building relationship, maybe getting a tripwire sale, something $7 to $49. Then you're trying to get them to a $2,000, $3,000 course. Then you're doing high ticket. You can shortcut all of that by speaking on stage in front of them. Speaking on stage in front of them, you can sell them a couple $1,000 product pretty easily and then get them to a high ticket. And that's, if you look at most people's business, how much do you need to make in a month to have a successful business? $20,000. Well, how many $100 products do you have to sell to get there versus getting on one stage to make that? If my goal for my clients, customers, is to hold 2 events a year where they sell $100,000, or have them getting 1 high ticket client a month through speaking gigs. If you do that, you have a $500,000 a year business.
Yeah, straight out of the gate. That's a great, and they all link together, Steve, don't they? Such as, when you're saying there about who are we serving, what's its message, its product, onto the stage, and then getting you speaking, and onto the presentation to make sure that's delivered with concise, and it resonates, like you say, on what they get out of it, more than look at me. There's nothing worse than buy my stuff, is there? And then, like I said,
nobody listens.
Yeah, it's impossible. I did a podcast earlier today, and we're talking about how the social media today is like light speed. It's just so fast and whatever, and just how do you break through that? I've spoken to 10 people in the last 6 weeks, and they've never even heard of Gary Vee, and look how much stuff he puts out there.
Wow.
And it's like, wow, so how, and what does he create? 100 pieces of content a day, something ridiculous like that. His team does. So, but you do find people like that who are just in their little, cycles or little bubbles or whatever. And maybe digital is not as prominent than maybe mom and pop brick and mortar store or whatever it may be. But, ultimately you do that. So you've got to be in that situation of differentiation, or you've got to speak to that, shorter audience. And, we revamped our site on the agency recently, and we have sectors that the agency specializes in, specific niche sectors, and we talk about generalists versus specialists. And if you want brain surgery or dental, you don't just go to a general guy who can do everything. You want somebody who does brain surgery. And that's where I think a lot of people miss. And if you're out there as the listeners, and you're just supplying everything to everybody. And I love the favorite question. So who's who's your ideal customer? Oh, I sell to everybody. It's like, oh, nope. Really? But I have that little cute smile there type of thing.
Well, I like it because it leads to business.
Yeah.
The minute they say that, I'm like, okay, let's talk about that a little bit.
About that. But the advice to the audience is you cannot sell to everybody. You haven't got enough marketing budget. Sony, Apple, they're not big enough to reach everybody. You've got to niche down into something, from that side. But that's a great intro, Steve. I really appreciate you sharing that backstory. And I've interviewed, I think we're getting close to 60 podcasts now that are ready to go out, are out on the line on the app and things. And every single person I interview, they've all had this spectacular failure because they go out into the big wide world. And some of these people are wildly famous now and made hundreds of millions of dollars in exits. And they've all crashed, they've all burned, they've all failed. And it's as if now I expect it. And, the audience and our listeners, they sort of say, well, it's okay saying how great this guy is and who he is, or how great this girl is and this lady is, but what did they learn? How did they learn? And of course, you blew you'd saved up 3 years, 25 grand to then sort of burn through it in which is less than 8 weeks and end up in an 88 room. So that's some lessons. So congratulations for the bounce back. It shows character, and that's awesome. If you want to connect with Steve, just check out Steve Werner. We'll put all the links in below. So tell us a little bit more. As we get into the questions sort of section, Steve, here, why is it so important for business to have that absolute clarity around themselves, the brand and their offer? I mean, we talked about it, touched with Dan Kennedy, but in a summary version, just recap that for them, why that's so important.
Sure. I mean, you touched on it really well. Like, you would never go to a generalist for something that was important. So I don't know if you haven't heard the article, 1,000 True Fans, definitely go Google that, right?
Yeah.
I go even a little bit further. So the premise of the article is that you only need 1,000 true fans to have $1 million a year business.
Yeah.
You have 1,000 people, they're going to spend enough money to generate $1 million for you. And I would go even a little bit further and say, you really only need 100 high ticket. Like, if you had 100 people paying you $25,000 a year, it's $2.5 million. It's definitely, and that's doable. So if you look, I know, well, I'll use the whiteboard since I have it. I mean, over here, you could have, let's say you have 1 million, see if I can do this right, 1 million followers, right? But they're low ticket followers. And like we talked about, the funnel is huge, right? You've got like all these steps to get them down, and you're not making money until you get to here, right?
You got it.
Well, if that's your funnel, how much support do you need? How many employees do you need? How much are you working? And I love work, right? I work every day for at least, I would say, 6 to 8 hours a day, usually more. But if you want 1 million followers, if you're Gary Vee has a multi-million-dollar agency with tons of people working for him.
Hundreds,
and there's nothing wrong with that. But to compare that, if you come over here, and let's say that you want the 1,000 that we were talking about, right? Your sales funnel can be like that.
Yeah.
And you're making money all the way. And that's, I mean, I have an assistant. That's it. That's all I need.
Running lean, which is great. It's the entrepreneur's number one rule, run lean, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, I mean, my life, I love my life. I get to travel. Like, I love work. I would never, ever tell somebody to like, the 4-hour work week's a myth. Even if you read the book, you realize that it's a myth, right? Nobody wants that. We get our personal validation from working on something and getting success. But having this funnel allows me to have my level of success.
Yep.
I can travel where I want. I can drive what I want. I can eat what I want. And I get to help people. Like over here, do you think Gary Vee can go out and like, yeah, you want the fame, like, but he goes out in public. People are asking him all the time, how do I set up a website? How do I do Instagram? Like, you're answering all these entry-level questions, which I don't like. I like dealing with high level. I like dealing with people who have a business, who are looking for a way to go further faster, right? And that's what I do over here. My customer, my average customer that comes in is already making $500,000 a year or more.
Yeah, brilliant. And that's because you've got it targeted there. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for the explanation and the guide. So when we talk about the steps to build that high ticket offer, I know you've done the funnel, you've done the example there, but just recap the steps, for that sort of high ticket offer. What should people be looking out for at the moment?
So my high ticket offer came out of this. This will be a little bit of a roundabout, but we'll get back to it. When I started with Dan Kennedy pointed to the table and was like, sell anything on that table. It all works for dentists. So I went and I already had magnetic marketing. So I took magnetic marketing, I took the copywriting stuff, I took herd building. I think I took 5 courses and I went through them all in a month. Yeah. So like, I'm like 6 hours a day digging through this stuff. Then I went and got the J. Abraham Mr. X book. If you guys haven't seen that book, it's $1,000. I bought mine. Mine was a black market edition. I bought off of eBay and I paid over $1,000 for it. But it's packed with ideas and I learned all of them. So then I have like this stuff that's percolating in my head. I'm at an event where I'm selling Dan Kennedy stuff. This was the second Dan Kennedy, the second event where I sold Dan Kennedy stuff was my 3rd event. So the first event crashed and burned. The second event, no, I'm sorry, 4th event. First event crashed and burned. Second event, I didn't sell anything. 3rd and 4th event, I sold Dan Kennedy stuff. But I started talking to the people in the room. And here's the thing, when you talk to somebody, especially a client, they need to be talking 70 to 80% of the time.
Yeah.
So, hey, what's your biggest challenge around internet marketing? Like, this is 6 years ago. What's your biggest challenge with Facebook? Well, what would make that easier for you? How can I help? And I started making notes. I used to carry around a little pad of paper in my back pocket, and I wouldn't do it when I was talking to them, but then I would go in the corner and I'd write down. And through talking to people at those 2 events, I learned what their biggest challenges were. I went back and I talked to people that were in my world, and I started to formulate, okay, I'm going to do a VIP day. The VIP day, I'm going to go to their office. Well, they said these were the biggest problems. The biggest problems are their office manager doesn't have enough time. They don't have systems together. They're not doing follow-up. They're not getting enough inbound leads. They're closing 2% of calls. That's a problem. So what can I do out of all this stuff? Now, at this point, I have 5 Dan Kennedy products in the Mr. X book. Those all have solves problem solves for those problems.
Yeah.
So I came back and I just started writing down all this stuff. Then I said, okay, I'm going to go sell a VIP day. The VIP day at the next event that I sold was cheap.
Yeah.
It was $1,000, and it was $1,000 a plane ticket and hotel. I'll come to your business, and I offer a money back guarantee on it. If you don't think that what I give you at the end of that is valuable, I'll refund all the money, and it's on me.
Yeah.
That makes sure that you're going to listen.
Yeah.
So that's
massive, the guarantee, isn't it?
So taking that, and how do you build a high ticket? Figure out who your avatar is.
Yeah.
Go interview them. Have coffee with them. Like, med spas.
Yeah.
Easy market. Go say, hey, Mr. Med Spa owner, Mrs. Med Spa owner, I'm working with people in med spas, but I'd love to just interview you. If you have a podcast, put them on the podcast and interview them there. But you can also take them out to coffee, learn their pain points, and then say, hey, if I were to solve this for you, would it be worth $20,000? Would it be worth X? Do your first one or two for very low ticket and tell them, hey, I'm just starting with this VIP program. I want to make sure to serve you. What do you think they're going to say? Yeah, of course you can work with me. And you're not going to make a ton of money, but it's not about if you have
validation, isn't it?
If you have this pie in the sky dream of, I'm going to go charge them $25,000 out of the gate, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to sell one, and then you're going to be like, oh my goodness, I have to deliver. You're going to freak out. You're going to have a bunch of stress. You're probably not going to deliver very well, and you're not going to get a good testimonial. It's all going to crash and burn. Don't do that. Like it really bothers me that is becoming the in vogue thing. If you look at the ClickFunnels group, there's so many people in there that are doing this, but it leads to, you're going to have that payday, but it's not about money because you're not going to have the validation. You're not going to have the confidence. You're not going to get the testimonial.
You're not going to get a repeat customer either.
No. I mean, one of the biggest things that I learned, this has nothing to do with this directly, but charge high ticket, but also once you know you're getting results, take a percentage and figure out how to get them on retainer. And you get them on retainer by, you had such a great experience here, I'm going to charge you 20 to 40%, right? So my retainer fee is $10,000 for 6 months. It gets you access to me, but I also get a percentage of sales. That will build your business. I only have to work with 5 to 10 clients a year because of that setup. And that's where everyone wants to be. The way that you get there is you start off small by giving a result, by getting the testimonial. I still have people who have worked with me for 3 and 4 years because I've gotten them a result over and over again, and they know they can trust me, and they know they can count on me.
Absolutely. And that's great. And I love how you break that down, Steve. So thanks for sharing that one. So you mentioned earlier about these smaller events, live events, 10, 24, 25 people, and close up to 50% on the high ticket offer. You know, we talked about what it takes, guts, determination, all that. What else would you ask people? If people are wanting to maybe go out there on their own and have a go at this, what else does it take to do that?
So if you're thinking about, like, I want to do an event, I want to do an offer, first go interview people, outline your high ticket offer. The easiest possible way to sell that is to put a few people in a room. Yeah. So some of the clients that I work with, when they're just getting started, if they don't have a huge list, if they don't have any of this, I worked with 2 ladies. They had a list of less than 500 people.
Wow.
We put 17 people in the room. They ended up closing 12 of them on a $20,000 offer.
Amazing. Wow.
So the reason
$240,000. Wow.
The reason that they were able to do that, and in transparency, they took payment plans. So they didn't walk out of the room with that.
No, I understand that.
They walked out of the room with over 100K though.
Wow.
And the way that they were able to do that, they had this small list. They had some people come from their list. Yeah. They just started marketing online through organic methods. They did 0 paid traffic. And they started talking to people and saying, hey, would you be interested in this outcome? So the outcome for them, they're mommy bloggers. I don't know if that's a thing where you are. It's moms who blog about mom life and how to do things with kids. And they said, hey, would you like to know how to make an extra $500 to $1,000 a month through helping websites? So doing SEO, doing all the backlinks, doing all that stuff. And they started talking about it. And what they did, it's real simple. The people who started paying attention to them, they posted every day, right? It's two ladies posting every day for about 3 months. Everyone who started commenting, asking for more info, they said, hey, like, I'm happy to give you like a tidbit of information, but we're doing a 3-day event where we're going to take 15 to 20 people through everything you need to do this. We're selling it for, I think they sold it for $500, $500 or $600. And they started getting on the phone with people and selling them into the event. And it was all organic. Their ad spend was zero.
Yeah.
Their event space, because they didn't have it at a hotel, they had it somewhere else. They had a co-working space because it's much cheaper.
Absolutely.
Their total event space cost with food was $1,400. You don't need a mic. You don't need AV. You don't need crazy video stuff. Like all of the stuff that you need when you run a 150-person event, or even a 50-person, really, you don't need when you're doing a small event.
It saves a lot of money as well, doesn't it? It keeps it lean again.
So somebody else that I'm working with right now, they're having a little bit more of a challenge putting people in the room. They're charging a higher price. They're going to have 5 to 7 people at their event. But what we talked about, I actually talked with them right before I jumped on this with you. They're charging $3,000. So they're charging a higher ticket price because they are providing some video. They're doing some copywriting. But they've started, I said, here's what you need to do. Go on and start talking about the outcomes that you're getting. If I said, hey, I'm looking to work with 2 or 3 people at an event where we're going to stay in a house and we're going to bang out your funnel, we're going to get your video done, we're going to get your copywriting done, we're going to get all of this done for you, and I'm only working with 3 to 5 people, now it doesn't matter. Like, you want fewer people because it's personal interaction.
Yeah, and you've got to deliver. Yeah. Well,
that's the thing. Like, people out there, so don't be scared to hold a 5, 10, 15-person event and think that you're failing. You're failing because the paradigm that you have in your head says 150 people. If instead you say, how can I put 10 people in the room, charge $1,000 and give them so much value that they all buy from me? I had another person that I helped, very similar thing. We put 12 people in the room. They closed 9 of them on a $15,000 offer.
Wow, 75% close rate, isn't it? Amazing.
Well, but you can, because he knew every person in the room, he knew what that guy's business was, he knew what their struggles were, and he said, hey, I can sell you a coaching program where I'm going to work with you and you're going to get X. So that's, if you're thinking about holding a small event, start small. Because you can actually.
There's no shame in that. There's no shame in that, because people think, oh yeah, there's only 5 or 10 people there. You know, it'll be a failure. Whereas it could be wildly successful, is what we say.
Well, I mean, think about what would you do if Russell Brunson said, "Hey, I'm looking for 5 people to come to Boise, and I'm going to spend 2 days with you." How much would you pay for that?
Yes,
like, people would pay $100,000 for that. Like, and that, you just need to have that same mindset about yourself. It's about the outcome that you're getting people, not who you are or what you do or what you look like. It's about the outcome that you get them and the perceived outcome. And that's the thing. If you say, hey, I'm only taking 10 people and we are going to dive through everything that you need, that's a much different sales process than, well, I was trying to get 50 people in the room and only 10 showed up.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. So quickly, Steve, here, when we look at the sales presentation, so many people are comfortable speaking, but when you ask them to then stand up and sell from the stage, they all sort of go weak at the knees, they go queasy. You know, why is that? What do you think the reason is?
Well, they go queasy because people are scared to sell.
Yeah.
They don't want to seem salesy, and there are a few tricks that make it they're not even tricks, they're just methodologies that instead of nobody likes a hard sell. You touched on that earlier. Like, nobody likes somebody up there, you need to do this. This is for you. Take action now. Like, I'm going to fall asleep or I'm going to leave the room, right?
Yeah.
But the way that your presentation, so I'll draw this out because it's most people, when they do a presentation, make it all about them, right? They are making it 100% about, this is what I'm doing, and they're going to teach a whole bunch of stuff that's going to put people to sleep. Instead, Let me figure out which color marker I want to use here. We'll use this guy. Nope, we're going to use the red. Okay, so you have sad person over here. This is your audience attendee, right? They're standing over here and they're like, oh, I want X. Your job as a speaker is to open up the gap.
Yeah.
If you open up the gap and agitate their pain a little bit, they're like, I want what you have. Since we got colors, we might as well use it. You're the happy guy over here saying, I have what you want. And then you have the story arc, right? So this is most people just dump information. There's no rhyme or reason to it. They think that there is, but it's just bleh. Instead, you have a story. So the first part is the pain. The second part is the growth. Third part is the epiphany and success. Sorry, my writing's really bad. There's a story arc, right? Now, inside of each one of these, you want to tell a little mini story. And it's the same three pieces: pain, epiphany, success. Pain, epiphany, success. If you tell stories, you will get an emotional response.
Connection, yeah, you get that connection, don't you? Absolutely.
So 100%, this is what you want from people. You will sell way, way more with an emotional response than you will with the technical mumbo jumbo, like trying to make yourself feel great about how much you know. Instead, tell stories.
Brilliant.
That's all you have to do.
If you guys are listening on the app, I highly encourage you to head over to blog.thesuccesshub.io/podcasts. Check out the section in the specific page that we've got for Steve Werner here. And then I'm not quite sure what the time limit is on the podcast here, but we'll put it down there. And that little graph there that Steve's done is worth the time that you've listened to this podcast alone. If you're serious about this, the story arc, finding the gap, agitating the pain, focusing on the growth, the epiphany, the success. And then once you drop your offer in there at the end of that, which is, if you're interested in this and I can help you with this, we can get started, blah, 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 blah. It's going to be there because they're ready to go.
Well, this is, amazing. I'll walk you through really quickly.
Yeah.
Like if you're dumping value, if you're dumping like techno babble on them, there's no sale, right? That's when you have to hard sell them. If you're telling a story, if I start off and I tell you, my own story, right? I really struggled with holding my first event. I lost $25,000, but my epiphany, this is the first little piece right here. My epiphany was I found Dan Kennedy's Butts in Seats.
Yep.
That allowed me to hold my first event. But my first event, I only made like $9,800, which I thought was great. But Dan called me an idiot. That's my epiphany there. I need to sell in the back of the room. So now I have the big epiphany, right? The big epiphany is I need to speak. I need to sell. I need to help other people do that. How many people listening to this podcast are like, I want that?
Yep. Absolutely.
When you want that, the sale is right here, right? You just said in your brain, I want that, without me having to sell you.
So they're walking towards you as opposed to you having to ask.
All I have to do over here in the success piece is say, hey, this is what my life looks like now, which I've told you on this podcast, right? I get to travel. I get to run my own business. I get to have an assistant. It's not stressful. I love what I do. How many people want that?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's how I do it, right? Like I'm not trying to make an offer, but all I have to do then is list out, okay, 1, you get phone calls with me. 2, you get my course. 3, you get my speech critiques one-on-one with you. 4, I put you in touch with event promoters and I help you out. Who wants it?
Yeah.
If you don't, if this isn't for you, no big deal. Take this and do it. If you want to work with me, come talk to me.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
I didn't sell anything, right? Like I didn't throw anything at anybody. I didn't make anyone feel bad. Instead, I said, hey, this is probably enough. If you want, you can maybe go make something out of this. But if you want to do it faster, if you want to collapse time, here you go.
Sure. That's brilliant. Steve, how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in working with you? How can as we wrap up, how can they work with you? How can they get access to this? Is there a specific website they can go to, or is there a specific landing page?
Sure. So the easiest way, honestly, is through Facebook. I'm on Facebook Messenger all the time. You can find me, connect with me there, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. I have a free course that kind of goes through this a little bit deeper, and that is at myt.how, myt.how.
Yep.
And then my webpage, which has all of my info on it, is steve.cash, C-A-S-H.
I love it.
Connect with me.
And let's have a conversation and see where we'll go from there.
Awesome.
Steve, I can't thank you enough. I mean, the little graph at the end, I know you like using the little whiteboards. I'm so pleased because I know off the show, you were going to leave it out. You've wiped it off. We've had so much value on there. That's amazing. Thanks ever so much. And, if we were to sort of wrap this up in condense, I know it's hard because you provided so much value, but if we were to sort of wrap this up and condense it into 3 pro tips for the people wanting to get started, if we could just hold it to 3, what would they be?
The first one is know your avatar. Niche down. And the way that I did this, because I struggled with this a little bit, I used to have, I worked across 15 different verticals. But what I did was I went and I listed out everybody that was a high ticket client that I had worked with and gotten a result for. It didn't mean that they had paid me a lot of money. Somebody that I'd worked with and gotten a result. I looked at the result and what they had in common. And this took me, it was probably a couple week process, but figure out your avatar and really niche it down. It doesn't, I guess maybe I shouldn't pound that. You want it to be niche down that they feel, this is how you know you got your avatar right. When the person says you were speaking to me, I know I got the avatar.
It feels like, I'm just looking here at your profile and things like that. It feels like you were speaking to me. He's only speaking to me in my head. And it's like, you feel not special, but you feel valued and understood.
You feel understood. Eben Pagan said this. Eben Pagan, if you don't know who he is, he came from Kennedy as well. Eben says, if you can tell a random person what their pain is better than they can and describe it in a way where they're like, oh my goodness, this guy gets me, that person's going to become a client. They're going to buy from you because they know, like, and trust you instantly.
Yeah. So that's, number 1 is the avatar. What is 2?
Number 2 is develop a high ticket offer and realize that the price has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the outcome. So whatever your niche is, if your niche is lawn care professionals, figure out what their biggest pain point you can solve for them is, and then put a dollar amount on it and charge somewhere between 25 and 50% of that. That's the formula.
Perfect. And finally, what would you say?
Get on stages.
Get on stages. I knew that would have come in there.
Either your own or somebody else's. Get on stages. Figure out how to do it. I know people out there, I give this, and people are like, I'm scared. I want to help people, but I'm scared to speak. If you help people, if you're already helping people, you have a moral obligation to do it. I don't care what you say. Overcome your own fear. Get out of your comfort zone. Get on some stages because it will make your life simpler.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, I cannot thank you. The value is immense. It's so real. It's what's going on in the world. It's helped so many people. Thank you for joining us on the Open Mic podcast today. And thanks for some of for the images and safety listing. We'll get these put on and we'll sort of screenshot this out. We'll put this on the blog as well. And again, please reach out to Steve. You can get him on Facebook Messenger. Just search for steve.werner.5667 on Facebook. But head over to steve.cash or myt.how. And it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope the snow keeps coming for you, because as a ski fan, I'm sure you appreciate that.
Awesome. Mike, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And thanks also for listening, guys. We appreciate the time and the choice that you have on the podcast market. We appreciate you learning more strategies and developing your growth engine journey. As always, get in the game, go do the hustle, go make it happen. And we're going to catch up with you on another Open Mic podcast real soon. Take care, guys. Have a great week.
You have been listening to The Open Mic, brought to you by the Success Hub. To find out more and to get the resources we have mentioned in this podcast episode, simply visit blog.thesuccesshub.io and view the podcast section. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to catching up with you in our next episode. This podcast and associated materials is published under copyright to The Success Hub. All rights reserved. No reproduction of this material is permitted.